Hey everybody, it's J.K. Walker with Mobile Automotive Diagnostics, and I'm coming at you with one of the first of many to come programming walkthroughs. This is going to be provided by Pass-Through PC. That's another company of mine where we provide laptops that are partitioned out for programming. Just like this rugged laptop you see here with multiple partitions on it that you select from boot. So you can keep all your stuff separate so your programs don't interfere. Now, back to the programming though, because that's what we're really here for. Today we're going to be doing a transmission characterization, right, on a 2014 Ford Escape. Now, went out to do this one, and this is something that's becoming more and more common, right? So when you replace that transmission, whether you do it with a newer, used, or however you may do it, you have to characterize the solenoid pack, and then the ECM or the TCM, whichever it has, right, needs to know exactly what the characterization for that solenoid pack is. Just like, with your diesels where you put your injector flow rates in, or you put your coding in for your injectors, right? Because each one of those is, got its own flow rate that it needs to know the exact numbers. It's the same exact way with these transmissions. So the characterization is actually that you're putting in there is going to be the flow, so it knows exactly where it is. And these transmissions have evolved so much from the past, and they've gotten to where they're so complex, and they need to be exact. It's no more kind of guessing where it may be, or hey, this solenoid should flow this much, or this, that. They want numbers to be so exact because that way they can offer a better drivability experience. So we're going to go ahead and go over. Today we're going to be using IDS. Now here's the thing. If you have FJDS, everything that we're going to do, you will be able to do with FJDS. The only difference that you're going to see is probably when we go to the live data section of it, the data logger section there, you're not going to have that. So you're going to want to have to use a scan tool to do that. And that's the biggest difference in FJDS and IDS is one of them has the scan tool portion in it and one of them doesn't. We went ahead and I used IDS on this vehicle because I was wanting to use the scan tool portion as well, so therefore I didn't have to use two tools. But if you're using FJDS, that's not going to be an issue. You just plug another tool in and then you look at your live data. So just to go over some things, once again, this is a 2014 Ford Escape. Our connection method is going to be the DLC, the OBD2 port. We're not doing any crazy things like bench flashing or anything like that. We're not having to isolate it on the network. Nothing like that at this moment. The transmission has been replaced with a used unit, and it's going to require programming of the solenoid characterization, right? So, the first thing we're going to do is we're just going to launch IDS. Now, when you launch IDS, it's going to ask you which tool are you using. Are you using the VCMM, the VCM3, your VCM1, or VMMM, or the VCM2? Today, we're using a VCM2, so we're just going to click VCM2. Now IDS is going to start. Now here's something that kind of gets people sometimes is that last vehicle that you were using this on. In this case it was an Edge. It's going to display that and it's going to say an open session was found. Do we want to resume that? We're going to click no we don't, or the X button, right? And then it's going to say, do you want to hold this and save recordings, complete, delete the recordings, or delete session? I always delete the session. I never save any of that stuff, so I click delete session, I hit the check mark. Now, when we get to here, we're going to go up here to where it says start new session. And then it's going to give us some options here. It's going to say all other 17-pin Titan or territory. We're going to go to all other because this is nothing fancy. It's nothing crazy out of the realm, right? So we're just going to go there and hit all other and hit our check mark to the right. Now it's establishing communication to the PCM, so this is where it's actually talking to the vehicle, and it's starting to ID things. Now it pulls it up, it's auto-ID'd the vehicle. It says, is this an Escape or a Kuga? Kuga must be like the exported model name. It's got an EcoBoost in it. The capacity is a 2-liter. It's an automatic transmission. Emissions level is 50 state emissions, so it's not a California only type emissions vehicle or something. And the model year is a 2014 MY. MY standing for model year. So anytime in Ford, when you'd ask you, is it like a 2009 or a 2010 MY? That's going to mean which model year is it, because the VIN year and the model year may be different. So we go here, and it's got a place for you to put a RO. I never put ROs in here. This is more of the dealership side of the tooling. Then it's going to bring up this screen where it's going to have all your information. Once again, then it's going to have your odometer. And I believe you can set that 2 miles, but I just never fool with it. I leave it at kilometers. VIN, I just blanked out the last of that VIN, so everybody didn't have this customer's VIN, but it will show you the VIN of the vehicle. Now, here's the thing. If that's not right at that point, you need to stop, because that means you're programming a different way. You're not going to be programming this way, and that's not really for this scenario, but let's say if you were doing a PCM or programming something different at that point, and that VIN isn't correct there, you need to stop, back up, and pump, because there's a different way you need to actually enter into this. So we're going to click up here to the toolbox. From right here, we'll just click the toolbox, right? And it's actually going to bring up this selection where it's VMM applications, VCMM applications, but we're not worried about that. Self-test, data logger, live network monitor, module programming, network test, VCI. That's your compact flight recorder, right? Body, chassis, electrical, and powertrain. We're actually going to select powertrain because that's where the function we're looking to do is. And then we're going to go down here, and we're going to go to transmission. As you can see, though, there's all kinds of different things there. You can even do a relative compression in your power balance test right in here. So we go to transmission, and then we're going to look, and then we go all the way to the bottom, and we can see our transmission characterization solenoid IDN, right? But also you can clear your transmission adaptive tables, stop use of transmission adaptives, and things of that nature. Let me go ahead and warn you, though. Never clear those adaptive tables if you've got a transmission that seems like it may be slipping. I had a customer, they wanted me to come in and do some programming. When you do actually program or update these transmission control modules on Fords, it will actually clear your transmission adaptive tables. So if a transmission is already on the edge and you do program it, it's going to start slipping. So make sure you do not clear those transmission adaptive tables or do any kind of programming on a transmission unless it's been replaced, if there's any kind of issues that you think could get worse. So what this is telling you is that this procedure will read the transmission strategy and IDN from the module, provide solenoid data, and provide functionality to replace the transmission strategy. It's basically saying, hey, good to go. We're going to read this. It says the performed as recommended in service manual procedures. Now, here's what you need to do. You should always be looking at some kind of service information when you're doing this. Don't just go in here blind and start clicking buttons. You can get yourself into trouble really fast. So it's going to say, do we wish to continue? We're going to hit yes. Now when we get here, it's going to say, what are you doing? Do you want to do transmission characterization? Are you doing the solenoid bands only? Are you doing solenoid bands without a vehicle connection? So we're like doing it on the bench. Or do we just want to exit this mode because we're not looking to do anything? Well, we're looking to do the transmission characterization. So we're going to go ahead and select that option, and we're going to click next. And then it's going to say confirm the following. Is this a 6F transmission? Front wheel drive transmission. So that would, how it's going to tell us to please wait. Get used to seeing this screen. You're going to see please wait a lot with IDS and FJDS. So we wait for that. And then all of a sudden it pulls those numbers out, and we're going to see here where it has, because here's our current strategy IDs. Now let's just say that we were just coming in here because we wanted to get those numbers because we were replacing the ECM or the PCM, right? Because the transmission control module is built into the ECM, so therefore it would be considered a PCM. So we're going in here, and we would just write these down, and then we would transfer them over when we was to program the new PCM, because not all the time will it do it for us when we do a PMI. So if we were doing that, we would just go ahead and we would just click here at exit, but we're not. So we're actually going to type in our new numbers. Now you're probably wondering, where do I get these numbers, right? Well, if you look on the transmission, there is a tag right there where it's going to have the solenoid strategy and the solenoid body ID. Now, here is an issue sometimes. These things are nasty, they're greasy, and especially if it's a used transmission. This sticker will wipe clean. I've not found the magical elixir that can take grease off of this sticker and not take ink off of it as well. So, if you've got that crazy mixture that you use and it works, please put it down in the comments, because I'm sure a lot of us would like to know. Because if this sticker wipes clean, or is it unreadable, or it is just missing altogether, is what you have to actually do is you have to pull the pan on the transmission and look at the numbers actually on the solenoid body itself. Now, that is time consuming. Usually by the time you get there, they've already put new fluid in it and everything's ready to go. They've already had the pan off of it. So now they're just having to pull it all back apart again. And nobody's ever happy about this scenario. So there is one other way you can do this. And is what I've done is, hey, is what could save you a lot of time, is if that junkyard that you ordered that transmission at, say if you're a small town like me, see if they'll just send us the PCM with it as well. And that way we can take the PCM and we could pull this information out of it, and we don't have to tear the transmission apart. So that's always a good idea. So you're just going to take those numbers and you're going to type them in here, right? And then you're going to hit update, because that's what we're looking to do, is update the transmission solenoid strategy. So we click update. Now it's going to say this required file was not found on the diagnostic tester. Do you wish to look on the network? Now, one thing I've learned is diagnostic tester is not actually the tool, but that is actually the computer. So what it's saying is there's a file that's on the server that is for that exact number that you have. All those, flow rate characterizations, right? And that's on the server. So when you type that number in, it goes to the server to look for that specific file. So it knows what it's actually going to have as a calibration, right? So that's what it's asking to look for. You're going to have to be on the internet to do this. So we just hit the check mark yes. Of course, once again, please wait. It says condition not correct. Now at this point I'm going, what's going on? Because I've done like 1,000,000 of these and I've never had issues. So I go back, when we back out there, it says condition not correct. You click next. It takes you back to this screen. So we click the toolbox again. I go back in here and I go, hey, we're just going to go right back in to powertrain transmission characterization solenoid IDN. And we get to that screen again. We're just going to click yes, next, whatever it said there. Transmission characterization. We're going to go back in there. Yes, the transmission is correct. We know it's a 6F, right? Please wait. Of course, now it's trying to pull that information back out of the PCM. And now my transmission strategy and my transmission IDN is not available. This is not good. And this is the point where you start to go, oh gosh, right? Because it had information in the ECM, PCM before. Now we tried to update it. Now we have nothing. So that means, did we erase it? Did we cause some kind of issue with it? Did we put the ECM in some weird state? Why can I not communicate to the ECM now? Or why didn't it take that information when we tried to put it in there, right? What did it say and what did it do, right? So is what I'm going to try to do at this point is I'm just going to put them back in again. I'm going to type them back in again, and I'm like, maybe I mistyped something, maybe something like that, right? I'm going to go to update. It's going to say, please wait. And then conditions not correct. If you notice, it doesn't look for that file, though, because those numbers were the same. Now, if you put different numbers, it would look for a different file. But it says, once again, conditions not correct. I click the check mark. It takes me here. Now, this is when you have to, break out your thinking tools, right? And one of the issues is a lot of people can program, and then when it gets to these scenarios, that's when people start going, oh, what's wrong, right? Or what could it be? And sometimes it's just something simple. So I'll go in here, we open it back up, and I decide that I'm going to go into data logger, right? Because data logger here is actually the thing. I know it says self-test is what I had highlighted, but data logger is what we actually went to. Then I just went down to modules, and I selected the PCM. So when I got here, of course, it's got to establish communication with the ECM. So obviously it did, because it pulled out some information to see what PIDs were available for us to look at. And these are PIDs, and this is just a scan tool portion of the tool, right? But when we're in data logger, if we click over here and we click this little erase button, that's going to take everything away from the tool. Now, the only one I selected, which is kind of hard to see because it's right behind me, was module supply voltage, because I want to see what is the supply voltage to this module, because low voltage can cause issues. When we look at the voltage, it's 12.23, and you would think, well, it's 12.23, so there shouldn't be any issues, right? 12 volts, that's what a car needs, is 12 volts. Well, that's not always true when you're programming. Some vehicles will require more voltage to program. Some vehicles, they're going to say, no, you can't perform this function unless you have this amount of voltage. But that's not every program. Some programs will just let you try, right? And they don't lock you out because of voltage. So here we have 12.23, but you also have to understand, during programming, things can actually come on. We can have windshield wipers come on, headlights can turn on, the horn can beep. Any of those things could draw the battery down and dip that voltage. So when you're actually writing, CAN frames to a module, well, you don't want the voltage to change, because voltage is how the flash chip is controlled, is by a voltage. So if you have this huge voltage swing, it's a possibility that flash chip may ignore whatever's going on for a second, and then when it comes back on, it's just like boop, and it errors out, right? Now you have it in this weird fugue state where it can't accept a flash, or it can't even read out, or it doesn't know what to do because it's still sitting there waiting for the rest of the information it's supposed to get. So is how we can combat that is with battery maintenance devices. Here we have a couple. This is the Power Max unit. This is the Shoemaker unit, right? And this is the Top Don Tornado. I use this Power Max a lot. This Top Don is a really good unit, and I used to have one of these Shoemakers. It was my first one. Now, this one's been rebranded by OTC and Snap-on. Even their roll-around that they have is actually like a Shoemaker. And it's rebranded, and of course it's Snap-on. But that's who's actually building that for them. So, is the reason you have this, though, is it keeps it at a certain voltage, and it keeps the voltage up. So when you have a high demand of current, it doesn't bring your voltage down. Now, the old roll-around battery maintainer, chargers, or whatever you want to call them, right? Those actually work in a different way. They actually put out more voltage, right, than they do amperage. And even if you put it on a high amp mode, like, engine start, right, it's not going to work out, because you're going to have something called AC ripple in there, and it's going to start to cause issues. And I don't know if you've ever been in one of these and you put the jump on it and it goes in the radio and things like that inside the car, and you hear those noises. That's the AC ripple. So definitely you do not want one of those plugged into the car. So let's say you don't have one of these and all you have is a roll around battery charger. You can use a set of jumper cables from a vehicle that has a good alternator that we know doesn't have, like some really bad current draw or anything like that. What do they call it, like an AC ripple, or doesn't have some parasitic draw issue or something like that. That could be the alternator. Definitely, if you've got something that's got a good alternator, usually I would use something like a truck that's going to have a big alternator on it. You can use that in a pinch. And a lot of us mobile guys, we actually just use our vehicle. We'll have like a quick disconnect jumper cables. We'll just use those when we're programming vehicles. So I went ahead and I plugged a maintainer in it because I didn't have a maintainer plugged in it, right? Because I was being a rebel. I didn't listen to my own advice. So this is one of those moments, just like your parents used to tell you, do as I say, not as I do. Don't do what I do. Don't be a rebel. Unless you are really good at recovering modules, don't go out there and do things like don't put a maintainer on them and go to programming them, because then you're going to brick them. And if you don't have the knowledge to recover them, well, it's going to start getting expensive for you. So at this point, the tool decides it doesn't want to communicate. And this is like when I'm grabbing the maintainer out of the truck and hooking it up and everything like that. And then, of course, it takes me to this screen. It takes a second. It says, oh, there's my tool there. So once I got the maintainer hooked back up, everything was working. So we were good to go. Now it's asking me what do I want to do. I want to exit this because now it's not connected. It's you know, it got connection back, but I'm going to have to go back in here. We go back to this VIN screen. It takes us. We click the toolbox once again. We go to data logger. We go to transmission, and it doesn't matter. I went to modules the first time in PCM. I'm going to transmission this time because I think there's going to be less PIDs. It's in the same module. It's going to matter. It's the same PID. So I go here. Once again, I'm going to click my little erase button to get all those PIDs out of the way. I just want to look at module supply voltage. So I'm going to click that one. We hit the check button. Now I've got 13.53 volts. Which is weird because I know that maintainer is putting out like 14.2. Right? It's got a little thing on it. But I'm not at the point I'm going to sit here and diagnose a 0.7 volt voltage drop on this vehicle, because I'm here to do one thing and one thing only. If they want me to diag it farther than that, I will. But who knows? It could just be some kind of fluke, right? I would have to go through and measure it actually at the PCM, see if that's what it's actually seeing. Who knows? So I go here, takes us back. We go to transmissions. We're going to go back to our characterization, right? From powertrain, transmission, characterization, solenoid ID. Once again, this screen, we're just going to click yes. We're doing the transmission characterization. We already know this. We've been through it like 8 times. So we click the check mark once again. Yes, we know it's that transmission. Please wait. We have done a lot of waiting on this one. Now we get back to here, and now those IDs are actually in there. So I believe is what happens, and you got to watch with these push button forwards because they're really bad about doing it. If that voltage, even though it's at 12 volts, they want to like drop and go into like a power conservation mode, right? So it senses that you've not started the vehicle and you're just sitting there, so it kind of just like starts shutting things down to conserve power. And it usually it'll say something on the dash like battery something relay. I forgot what they called it, but usually I think is what happened in this scenario. So we go in and we're going to type our transmission solenoid strategy in. So we type them in, and then I look to see, and I go back over them, and I notice that I copied this one and this one. Now, here's the thing. If I went to click update, it would have said, you know, this is not a valid characterization. So I noticed that before I hit update, though. So I went back and I fixed it, and I went down here and I clicked update. Once again, it says, please wait. We don't have to pull the file because we already pulled it, right? So, bam. Procedure was successful. The module software was successfully updated. So that's our strategy, and that's our IDN. Now, it's always a good rule of thumb, if you're out there in the field programming or even at your shop, is to just go ahead and hit start print screen on your laptop. Take a screenshot of this screen right here, and that way you can always prove that you actually did program it. So if somebody says, well, you didn't program it, or you didn't program it right, well, you go, well, there it is. That was the procedure successful screen, meaning I've done it correctly, and those are the numbers that I put in. So now we're just going to click the check mark. Now, you're not out of that function yet, though, because it takes you back to this screen where we're going to click exit. We exit out, and it says if command DTCs are set while performing this function, clear command DTCs prior to returning the vehicle. So we're going to click there. We're going to go function complete. Function is now exiting. Now we go back to the VIN screen. We're going to click the toolbox once again. right? So we click up here at the toolbox. We're going to go to self-test now. Now, this is an FJDS. The data logger part is not an FJDS, but the self-test is. So we go to self-test, and we're going to go to all command DTCs. That's a full vehicle scan. And it's going to say reading continuous DTCs. And there is a please wait in there, but let me tell you something. This takes a long time to read DTCs. So we go down there. It's got a U2100 in it. It's got an ignition control code for the BCM. Looks like it's got an initial configuration not complete code. And they said they just put another battery on this thing, so chances are it had a bunch of low voltage codes too, you would think, right? So I'll go over here. I'm going to just click the little eraser button once again, and it's going to say, hey, you want to clear the DTCs. And then it's going to recheck those DTCs. So we hit yes, it's clearing them. Now it's reading them again to see what we've got. We still have that U2100 code. We also have a lost communication with battery monitoring sensor A code, which now that could have something to say with why did it go into that shutdown mode, even though it was at 12.2. And then it's got a rear window motor position sensor code. So in other words, we don't have any codes for like, you know, PCM or TCM or anything like that. So now it's going to say is, do we want to exit? We're just going to click yes. And just like that, we programmed the transmission characterization on that vehicle. It didn't really take long. There was a little bit of hurdle, but in the end, we actually got through it pretty easy. So that's the thing. It's not really that it's hard. It's sometimes you just run into a lot of hurdles. So when you're programming, one thing that you always want to make sure that you're doing is that you're reading service information. Most of the time, anything that you're going to do, the service information is going to guide you along to what you need to do. It's not going to tell you what button you need to click and where you need to click it, right? But for the most part, it's going to tell you what function you need to run. And you just have to find it. So, maybe you're in a shop and you want to learn a little bit more about programming, right? Well, then make sure to like and follow and subscribe to the channel, right? Because we're going to cover all kinds of things like that. Because once again, you know, like pass-through PC, and that's what we're dedicated to, is programming. We build laptops and provide support for the aftermarket programming. Now, I will say, you know, there are other people out there that are providing laptops and they build a good product. But we are one of the only companies out there that are actually giving you full administrative privileges to your laptop. And we even give you the software to back up your laptop. That way, if you was to have a catastrophic event, we could have you back and running within the same week. Right? So we're not putting you down for weeks to like rebuild and install all your software and get all your files back and all your logins and accounts and things like that. We're going to really take care of you. So definitely make sure to follow the channel, right? Because we're going to cover all kinds of things like this. And we're going to give you all kinds of scenarios. And it's not just going to be the, hey, everything's great and look how easy it was. I clicked this and I clicked this and it worked. Just like today, we're going to show you some problems that you can face and some hurdles that you're going to have to overcome. Once again, everybody, thank you for watching the video. If you've made it this far, please just make sure you hit that subscribe button. And just remember, there's money in these streets.